So what if a certain way of thinking, a type of neurodiversity, was actually perfectly suited for our new AI world? It's a pretty wild idea, right? Today we're diving into this concept, how a blind mind's eye might just have a surprising edge when it comes to understanding artificial intelligence. Okay, let me ask you something really quick. When you're reading a book, a really good one, do you see a movie playing out in your head? Can you actually picture the characters, the places, all the colors in super sharp detail? I think for a lot of us, that's exactly what reading feels like. But what if that's not the case for everyone? What if I told you that for a whole bunch of people, that internal movie screen is just blank? It turns out the whole seeing things in your head thing isn't universal. Nope. For some folks, the mind's eye doesn't visualize at all. Yeah, there's a name for this. It's called aphantasia, and it's basically the inability to voluntarily create mental images. So if you have aphantasia, you can't just, conjure up a picture of an apple or your best friend's face in your mind. Instead, the way you think is often way more verbal or conceptual. It's based on abstract facts and feelings, not pictures. Okay, so what in the world does this have to do with reading, or even more importantly, with AI? Well, the very existence of aphantasia kind of throws a wrench in our usual assumptions about how we process information. It forces us to totally rethink what it even means to read. And that brings us to our first big idea here, the great decoding. You see, for centuries, we've basically assumed that reading and visualization go hand in hand. The common wisdom is that good readers are good precisely because they can turn those words on a page into these rich, detailed mental movies. But is that really what's happening under the hood? And this is where we get to what's being called a reading revolution in how we understand this stuff. The core argument is decoding language doesn't actually require mental pictures at all. The pictures, they might just be an optional extra, a cool feature, but not a requirement for actually understanding the text. So this really sets up two totally different ways of looking at literacy. On one side, you've got the classic view, literacy as imagery. That's the mental movie idea. But on the other, you have literacy as pattern matching. And this is the key. The idea that reading is really about recognizing abstract symbols, decoding grammatical structures, and pulling meaning from that. It's a pure act of decoding, not of painting a picture. All right, so if reading is really about pattern matching, what else thinks in patterns? Ah, you see where I'm going with this. This brings us right to the other half of our story, the mind of an AI. I mean, how do these tools like ChatGPT actually work? So let's think about this for a second. What's the native language of an AI, like a large language model? I mean, it spits out text that sounds perfectly human, but is it really thinking in words and images like we do? And the answer is a big, resounding no. An LLM isn't thinking in any way we'd recognize. It's this massive, complex mathematical engine. It doesn't see images, it doesn't understand concepts. It just sees statistical relationships between words. Seriously, think of it like the world's most sophisticated autocomplete, just predicting the very next word based on this gigantic web of patterns. It lives in a world of pure, abstract data. And this is where everything snaps together, right? If AI speaks the language of patterns, and some human minds are naturally wired to think in patterns, well, that's where we get to what some are calling the aphantastic advantage. Let's just lay it out there, plain and simple. What an AI produces is, at its core, a pattern. It's just a sequence of words that is statistically the most likely to come next, based on the math it's learned from, basically the entire internet. And here's the beautiful connection. The aphantastic mind is already set up for this kind of thing. It's already decoding the world through concepts and facts and patterns without having to go through that extra step of translating everything into a mental picture first. And this leads to a pretty stunning conclusion, right? That people with aphantasia could be the perfect decoders for what AIs are putting out. In a way, they're native speakers of AI's language, the language of pure, unadulterated pattern. So, here's how you can picture the process. Step 1. The AI generates text, which is really just a super complex pattern. Step 2, the aphantastic mind, which isn't busy trying to build a movie scene, just directly processes that pattern and its structure. And step 3, the meaning gets unlocked. But without that visual middleman, it could be a much more direct, maybe even more efficient pathway to understanding. Now, this is more than just a cool little fact about cognitive science. This has some massive implications for the kinds of skills we're going to value in the future. So let's zoom out and think about what this new kind of artificial literacy really means for all of us. What this really points to is a future where we absolutely need a diversity of minds to work well with AI. We're kind of entering this new era of artificial literacy where being able to interface directly with the logic of these systems is going to be a huge skill. And in that world, a mind that's great at visual thinking and a mind that's great at abstract pattern matching are both incredibly valuable. Neurodiversity suddenly becomes a real strategic advantage, not just a buzzword about inclusion. I mean, the takeaway here is pretty profound when you think about it. A cognitive trait that was for a long time seen as a limitation, not being able to visualize, could actually be reframed as a unique and powerful strength in this new age of AI. It's just a perfect example of how new technology doesn't just change our tools, it changes how we value different ways of thinking. And that really leaves us with one last big question to chew on. As we get more and more tangled up with these artificial minds that think in pure abstraction, could it be that the mind's eye that doesn't see pictures is actually the one with the clearest, most direct lens on our future?